Good morning. I hope you're doing well. I'm here at the church on Saturday, December 19th. It's my wife's birthday. She is a wonderful lady, a beautiful, kind, caring, compassionate woman that allows me on her birthday to disappear, to do a little bit of work or a little bit of recording, a little message for you guys. Well, this is the fourth Sunday of Advent this week, and we're going to be looking at the theme for this week is love. The last 3 weeks we looked at hope, peace, and joy, and love. And love is one of those that it makes sense for me to think about this during the day of my wife's birth. You know, God loved me enough and loved us enough to bless us with her and bless us with his son, which is next week. So for me, it's a positive thing. It's a positive time. I know that it's also a season where there's a lot of memories and thoughts of the past, things that we hold on to, memories of loved ones gone, and memories of times before. Well, one of the things that has just been on my mind, I don't know, last couple weeks with all this, is living in North Carolina now. It's only snowed here once in the last 2 years, like significant, where the roads were even covered in any way, I think. That was 2 years ago. I think it was the second week of December. And we were able to go sneak out and go drive around and stuff like that. But, you know, I sit there thinking about that compared to where we came from. You know, the snow down here is as frequent, I think, as 90-degree weather is up in Wisconsin where we lived. And so it's just a crazy thing. Because snow for me is one of those things that it has something about it that I enjoy. I think a lot of it's because when snow comes, there's experiences, there's events, there's adventures, there's all these things that happen that you can look back on and are like, great memories, right? Great memories. I can remember as a kid, or just remember with my kids, building snowmen. Building snowmen, sledding down hills, building igloos, making massive igloos which you could that sit there and didn't melt for, I felt like, months after all the rest of the snow was gone and stuff. There's so many things. I remember being a youth pastor, and one week, or one winter retreat, it snowed while we were there, and I started this little snowball, this big, right? Like a little snowball. And I showed a couple of the students how, if you do it a certain way, you can make it get really big. And so I think I got it up to about, I don't know, 1.5 feet, and I quit. And they kept going. And they got this snowball that was like 4.5 feet tall. And the thing's humongous. So packed, dense snow. And they weren't paying attention too much, and they had it go down a hill. And the hill it went down, luckily, praise God, there was a tree that stopped it. Because if the tree wouldn't have stopped, it would have ran right into the dining hall, and it literally would have broke something because the thing was so heavy. But a tree stopped it. It's actually that campground where we were at was right where all the fires were this year, so they were lucky enough that they survived that. But there's all those memories, right? So snow brings memories. The beautiful memories of the snow, the fallen snow on the ground. It's just, there's a joy, but there's also that other side of snow that's not necessarily as fun. It's driving Driving in snow is one of those necessary evils, you know. It's one of those things you do if you have to, but if you don't, it's better not to. And there's always that debate. There's like, well, are you from here or are you from there? Can you drive in snow? Oh, these Southerners or these people, oh, you can't drive in snow or this or what. It's all that crazy stuff. And the reality, I think, is eventually everyone that drives in snow is going to have something happen to them. So it's difficult to drive and all that stuff. I can remember one time that it was one of those experiences. It was January 1997, so 23 years ago. I was going back to college, and I had to be there for a Bible quiz the next day, actually. And so I took off from my parents' house, and this is before cell phones. This is before, like, I didn't even wasn't listening to radio and all this stuff. And so I was driving on the roads and stuff, and there's these little back roads, sort of back roads. I mean, they're like roads around here, but I mean, they're state highways, and they were closed. But I had no clue, so I started driving on them, and I'm in my big '84 Impala, the big tank thing that can basically run over anything. It felt like no power, but just it had the big chrome bumpers. Excuse me, and so I was driving, and the snow was on the ground. It wasn't plowed at all or anything. It was like, oh, this is not good. And I come over this hill, and there's another vehicle coming. And, I'm doing fine until this other vehicle's coming, and I overcorrect. So I feel like I'm too close to the center. So I want to move a little bit over so that I give him a little bit more room. As I do that, I hit the snow on the side, and it just pulls me off the road, and there's nothing I can do. And so I go in a ditch, and the ditch is deep enough. It's probably 6 feet deep, and the bottom of it there's a fence and rocks and stuff, and so my car is hanging out of it. Of course, the guy in the truck stops, and it's like, I'm sitting there thinking in my mind, it's like, yeah, if you would have been a little bit over on the road, on the flat side of the road, I wouldn't have been there. But so I ended up getting to a gas station. Tow truck comes and pulls me out. But I need to be up there. I need to be back at school. All my stuff's in this car. So I go. I drive the rest of, I think it was like three plus more hours on the regular ride. Probably 3.5. And so I take off and I keep going. And quickly I realize that my alignment's gone. I didn't realize at the time it was my alignment, but I do now. And my car was shaking. It was shaking because as soon as you get up at any speed, because you're so out of alignment, the car just is not level. And so eventually I'm just going and going and going. And I keep doing this, and it's getting dark because it's taking me really forever to get up there because of all the snow. The problem is, it's supposed to be -40 that night, wind chill factor. So it's setting probably it was below zero outside this regular temperature. And I'm driving in the middle of northern Indiana, south of Chicago, in the farmland. There's nothing. There's not towns. There's literally places where you can go like 20 minutes without a real town. There's homes, and I'm alone in my car that's shaking. No cell phones, nothing. And so I'm just wanting to get there. It feels so overwhelming. But it's so slow. And in the midst of this, I know my mom's at home wondering. She's questioning. It's like, is he going to make it? All this stuff. I don't even know if I even think I told them that I was in an accident at that point. But I hadn't called. I'm going to call when I get back up to school. Waiting. There's that emotion in the midst of it, and that's hard, right? So you wait. My mom was waiting to know if I was safe. I hadn't called or anything, and she was. It's like, what do you do? And then I'm waiting to get there. I'm driving, but I'm still waiting because I'm sitting there and my mind is empty. It's like I'm just in the middle of the darkness. There's no roads, no cars on the road, just me. Snow's coming down. There's already snow on the ground. It's extremely cold. All my stuff's in the car. You're just wanting to get there. You're just wanting for this moment to be over. It's a hard feeling, isn't it? It's a really hard feeling when you get to those places. The Christmas story is one of those stories too. There's a lot of waiting going on. There's waiting all over the place. I mean, Zechariah, he serves at the temple, and you see him have to now, because he didn't believe the angel, he can't talk. And, a lot of times I sit there, it's like when we read the story, he says he can't talk, he's serving, he goes home, he can't talk, and then the next, 3 sentences later, he can talk. But this is the length of a pregnancy. We're talking 9 months. He cannot talk. 9 months without being able to talk. That's a long time to wait. And he sort of knows that's connected to this, so maybe there's a hope he could talk again. But it's so hard. Think about the waiting there. And then there's others in the story. You got Simeon and Anna at the temple. They're waiting for this Messiah to come that God had promised. Anna was 84 at this point, and 84 now is not as old as it was then. I know some of you guys think, oh, I'm 84, I'm old. Well, 84 then was beyond life expectancy, crazy beyond life expectancy, and they were there waiting. She had lost her husband a long time ago. Simeon was there. They're waiting. They're prophets. They're waiting for the child to come. Mary, can you imagine? Mary has been told this child is the child. This is the promise, and she's waiting. She experiences when Elizabeth, the baby's leaping in the womb and all this stuff. So she knows, but the anticipation, the excitement, the emotions, there's waiting, there's overcoming waiting. And then there's Joseph. And Joseph, for me, as the guy in this whole thing, is he's waiting for his betrothed wife to have a child that's not his. He's supposed to be getting married to this girl, and he has to wait there. So he's caught in this, I have to wait for all this stuff. I have to wait to get to Bethlehem. All these other things that he had no control over in his mind, in a sense that it's not his fault she's pregnant. It's not, he has to go to Bethlehem. It's not his fault he has to go to Bethlehem. All this stuff, and he's waiting for this stuff to pass so life could actually be. I want my wife to be my wife, right? See, all this stuff, and Joseph's just waiting. So waiting's everywhere. And then there's the wise men that they see the star, but they have to wait till they get to the place. They're moving, but there's still a wait, anticipation. They're oh, are we gonna get there? Is this gonna be over? They wasn't a one-day journey, so at night they sleep. It's oh, we'll get there. It's waiting. And then there's Israel, the country, all the people that are waiting for this promised Messiah. So waiting is everywhere. And then you have the disciples. Even after Jesus comes, they have to wait. There's a point where they're waiting 3 days for Christ after his death. Can you imagine? They're waiting now. What do we do next? They're not waiting for Jesus to come back because they didn't think of that, but they're waiting like they're all together in the upper room, it says, except for Thomas, and they're all there that Sunday night, and it's now what? They're waiting to know what to do. And then Jesus, when he is getting ready to ascend from heaven, they ask him a question. This is in Acts chapter 1. Lord, are you at this time going to restore the kingdom of Israel? And see, they do this where they constantly are seeking this thing. They're I want. But they have to wait. And then Jesus leaves and says, you got to wait again until the Spirit comes. That was only 10 days, but still waiting again. And it doesn't end with that. It's just Jesus, he was waiting too. He was born in a manger, but he went through 30 years here on earth, living life, waiting to do the plan that God had called. When Mary ask him to turn water into wine or ask him to handle the wine issue at the wedding. He said, my time has not yet come. Acknowledging the fact is that he knew that he was waiting for this a planned time, planned purpose, all this stuff. So there's this very set stuff, and Jesus, again, was waiting. Waiting isn't always fun. It's not fun. It's not something we enjoy. It's like, this last week we got a large box, it's a present for someone. And the large box came in our foyer, and my kids, and my daughter in particular, she's like, I want to know, who is it for? What is it? What is it? What is it? Let's open it. Let's see. She's like so consumed with it. And it's like, you can't wait to see it. You want to know what it is. Is it for me? What is it? Because we won't tell her what it's for. She won't see this, but it's for her and Rowan. It's for both of them together. But anyways, I'm not going to say what it is. Because if she could watch this, she might. I don't know. Anyways, and we want her to wait more. Because it's more fun, right? Well, sometimes we have to wait. We hear the phrase, it's worth the wait. And we say that to try to give ourselves strength in the midst of waiting. It doesn't always help, right? Because other times we feel like waiting is too much to bear. I mean, I know that for some of you, like the idea of waiting for things that have been going on in our world, right? We're waiting for this to be over, that to be over, or this to be past, and stuff. We're like, I'm done with it. I just want to be past it. Here's the thing. Jesus is no different than us. In Scripture, he predicts his death and resurrection, or predicts it to his disciples. You can literally, if you look at all four gospel accounts, and Luke, or one of them, I think it's Luke. Luke, it's like chapter 8, and I know in Matthew it's like 16, but there's other places in these that he's already like years before the end. He's predicting, I have to go up to Jerusalem. I have to go up to Jerusalem, and I will suffer at the hands of the Pharisees, the teachers of law, these chief priests and stuff. He says it. And, it's one thing to say it. It's like, okay, I know this is going to go on. It's like, oh, yeah, it's out there. But Jesus keeps saying it over and over and over again. He predicts his death again. He says, I got to go to Jerusalem. I got to go to Jerusalem. I'm on my way to Jerusalem. All this stuff, because in Jesus' mind, he's still waiting to go to the place he's going. And actually in Luke chapter 12, he talks about division and peace, and he says, how I wish it was already handled. I wish it was already done. Because there is this desire, just like us, we wish the waiting was over. And Jesus felt that same emotions that we feel. But there's a statement with all this. Jesus came and did what he did at the right time, when time was right. Jesus gave himself to come and be with us and to allow his life to be given at the right time. Paul says it this way in Romans 5. You see, at just the right time, when we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. Very rarely will anyone die for a righteous person, though for a good person someone might possibly dare to die. But God demonstrated his own love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. God waited for the right time. See, God made the commitment that Jesus would come and what Jesus would do all the way back in Genesis with Abraham. When he made the promise and said, if you're not faithful to me, what happens to these animals when they're separated and he walks through them? He says, if you, as my people, as Israel is not faithful, let what happens to these animals happen to me. Referring to the fact is that he must be killed if we're not faithful. And Christ is that sacrifice. And so God knew back in Genesis for restoration of mankind. God knew always, but that's how far back it dates in Scripture. And that's one of those things that you sit there and think about. God knew, God planned, God had set in motion this thing that happened thousands of years later. He set it in motion. But he came for the right time. I've wondered a lot in my life why this or that is the right time, or why this or this hasn't changed. I mean, why does one loved one, figure out how to overcome the things they're dealing with, and another doesn't? Why does it take, and this has happened recently to me, why did it take 13 years before someone apologized or asked for forgiveness? Why can't some people we know, our loved ones that we have, why can't they see the truth that's right in front of them? We get to that place where waiting is so hard. Even when the truth is right in front of us, it's just so hard. It's so hard to sit there and says, we wait for many reasons because there's something behind it. There's always something behind our waiting. And our waiting isn't just by itself. There's some emotion, something that attached that causes have emotions of our waiting. I mean, we wait with no consequences, but when we wait, when there's something there. And as children at Christmas, they're waiting because they want those toys. They want to know. They have this desire for. It's that selfish thing or whatever in them. A mother waits by the phone to know if their son's safe on a snow cover because they love and they care. They want that safety. They want the tension to relax that's been on their shoulders. And God waited for the perfect time to come to be near to us so we can experience his love, his grace, his restoration. I've been asking this question in my mind this whole week, coming up on this. Why did Jesus come to earth as a child? I think we all know the simple answer. We could sit there and accept the simple biblical answer or the answer, not just biblical, but the simple answer that's like the Sunday school answer is what I mean. And that's he came to earth as a child because of love. But the way he came in a feeding trough, in a stable or a cave. Not just like a nice, clean stable, but it would have been a dirty stable, not very pleasant. He came to parents that, they were of the right line, but these were the parents that lived in a Nazareth. I mean, you ever thought of the fact is that, maybe they're in the line of David, but they didn't live in Bethlehem. Their family's from Bethlehem, but they had moved away. They were disconnected from their own family, at least their extended family. He was born in the middle of the night. God did all this because God loves us. His love for us is great enough that he came to wait among us. See, we always look at this and says God loves us, God experienced our stuff, all these things, but we don't normally think about the fact is that he experienced our waiting too. He experienced the emotions of having to wait for things to be completed. He watched loved ones perish. And I say that all the time, and people are like, well, who are you talking about? It's Joseph. Joseph's gone at the time of Jesus' ministry. And, Mary's there, but Mary wouldn't have been there if Joseph was still around. So Jesus, even Jesus on the cross, when he says, this is your mother, he's giving care of his mom to the beloved disciple. And he does all this because Joseph is gone. And you think about this is Jesus. This is God that raised Lazarus from the dead. I mean, how did Mary feel when she sees Jesus raise Lazarus from the dead and this other stuff? It's like, why didn't you do this for my husband? Why didn't you do this for your dad? Why did you let Joseph? See, and that's the thing. Jesus had to wait, and he waited through the suffering. He shows up at Lazarus, and he's still waiting and mourning before he waits, just like we do. He understands the pain. It's like, why does God? And well, God's experienced that too. He understands. He understands all of it. And he does that because he loves you, because he loves me. See, it wasn't enough for him to come and die and be rose again. He came and lived among us, experiencing our hurts, experiencing our joys, experiencing everything that we've experienced. Because he loves us that much, that he didn't want to just be like the God that says, okay, here, let me fix it. But he's the God that sits there and has experienced your pain, knows, can empathize with you, and he can be present with you in the muck of life because he loves you that much. A lot of times we think of waiting and we think that it's a bad thing. But the reality is that waiting is a part of life, and it can bring good things. I've told this story before. There was a girl in my youth ministry that her and her mother didn't really have a home. They were in a trailer living behind someone's house, and the people's house that they were living behind was taking advantage of them, making them pay rent to live in this trailer, pay them tons of money just to stay there, and they had no income. They were barely surviving. And there was a family in our church that had some teenagers that knew this young lady and her mom, that saw what was happening and knew that this wasn't acceptable, this wasn't wise, this wasn't healthy. And so they began to work to create a new path for them. But to do that, it took time. It took time to prepare a place. It took time to set up an environment where they could come and live. The mom at this family, had to get her unbelieving husband to accept it and figure out logistics. It was a lot. And so she worked for months after months. And I remember the teenage girl sitting there, why? Why is God doing this to me? And I'm sitting there and I know what's going on, but I can't share. And she has to wait like 4 months waiting. This is 4 months after the plan had started, but she had lived there at that point for almost 2 years, waiting for something to become different. Well, it did. And this girl and her mom's life were changed forever. You know, we have to wait. And sometimes we don't understand it. But that waiting will open up doors for God to move. It doesn't always mean that the end of the waiting period is what we want. You know, sometimes we wait and our loved one passes on. But here's the thing. You're not alone in that even. Christ understands. And we're coming up on Christmas this week. And I've been a lot more solemn this year And I think it's solemn because of everything we've experienced. But my solemnness is sort of on the outside, because on the inside I realize that we are loved. We are loved by a God that isn't like somewhere out there that doesn't get what we deal with. We're loved by a God that cares about what we deal with. We're loved by a God that was willing enough, that knew what he was entering and entered it anyways. I mean, would you ever go live in a stable, be born in a stable? Would you want your child to be born in a stable, a feeding trough? Would you want to have to escape to Egypt because of fear of your life? Would you want all those things that Jesus had to deal with? I mean, would you pick them up and choose them? Probably not. I wouldn't. But Jesus did that. He knew he was going to be betrayed. He knew who was following. He knew that he was coming to die. And he did it because his love for you and me is that great. There's some solemnness in it, but there's also peace in it. And there's joy in knowing that this part of the story isn't the end. That we can hope that he will come back again. He is coming back again, and he will restore all things to him. That we no longer are going to have to deal with all this, because the things that we deal with that cause all the waiting and all the pain and all the stuff, they're connected directly with sin. And our sin, humanity's sin, the corporate sin, the world's sin, all that. And that will all change. That will all change when God restores all things to him. So in this Christmas, this week as we enter Christmas, I would encourage you to remember that the manger, that the baby came with love for you before you even knew you needed his love. He loved you that much to suffer, to grow up as the poorest of the poor, where he had no rock, no bed, no pillow for his head, a rock for his pillow, because he loves you that much. May God bless you and keep you.